In Education for Critical Consciousness, Freire argues that education should not simply transmit knowledge. Its purpose is to help people become critically aware of their reality so they can participate in transforming it. First, let's begin with a question. Who is responding to what? On the who side of this question are us, human beings. On the other side is our surrounding reality. Human beings are rational creatures, and our surroundings consist of the themes of our epoch, of our age, our time. With this in mind, people can either understand and integrate with their surroundings or merely adapt to them. Freire explains the difference between integration and adaptation as follows. Integration results from the capacity to adapt oneself to reality, plus the critical capacity to make choices and to transform that reality. In other words, if one merely adapts to their surroundings, they give up the opportunity to become a subject and instead become an object. Integration, by contrast, requires the capacity to question reality and actively participate in transforming it. Integration, by contrast, requires the capacity to question reality and actively participate in transforming it. For rational human beings, the challenge is to resist the indoctrination of the themes and ideologies of their own epoch, of their own time. Prerequisite for protecting oneself from such indoctrination is questioning. Yet, questioning alone is not enough. It is only the beginning of developing critical consciousness. Freire develops these ideas through the example of Brazil. His discussion is grounded in the social and political conditions of mid-20th century Brazil, but he presents this experience to illustrate a broader process by which dominant groups shape public consciousness. According to Freire, Brazilian elites promoted what he describes as an imported or alien culture and encouraged people to think through prepackaged, ready-to-consume understandings of important concepts rather than developing their own understanding through critical reflection. In doing so, they manipulated the meanings of concepts such as democracy, freedom, popular participation, and education for their own benefits, with the aim of creating what Freire calls a massified society. A massified society is one in which people are transformed from subjects into objects by discouraging them from questioning the assumptions behind the ideas they are asked to accept. Of course, not everyone accepted this new way of perceiving the world. Some began questioning its premises, which again is the first step towards resisting indoctrination. This clash between the elites and public intellectuals is the story of the generations before us. However, there is an important point here. This clash is not merely opposition for its own sake. It's an intellectual challenge to the effects of indoctrination. Therefore, this effort cannot take on the characteristics of sectarianism, which Freire describes as a lack of democratic culture driven by purely emotional and uncritical reactions. In practice, sectarianism often reduces political disagreements to an uncritical us versus them struggle instead of encouraging genuine dialogue. At this stage of naive consciousness, people sense that something is wrong, but they cannot quite identify what it is. In other words, they cannot comprehend the causes of their own situation. To move beyond this stage, they must become subjects, capable of perceiving and responding to the questions and challenges arising from their own context. They must move beyond weak explanations and a limited capacity for critical discussion towards these words that I cannot pronounce for now, which Freire defines as the awakening of critical consciousness. This transformation requires more than reflection alone. It also requires action. Freire refers to this unity of reflection and action as praxis. Through praxis, people critically examine their reality while actively participating in transforming it. Reflection without action remains incomplete, just as action without reflection risks becoming uncritical activism. The question then is whether our education systems are capable of supporting this transition and bringing people's capacity for democratic deliberation to life. Freire argues that critical education is necessary to help people move beyond a naive consciousness that is the inability to understand their own situation. Such an education prepares people to confront future challenges rationally and to develop critical awareness. It also equips them to resist elites who manipulate legal and political institutions in ways that ultimately serve to dominate rather than empower the public. According to Freire, elites seek to turn the masses into pawns of irrationality, exacerbate the prevailing irrational climate of public discussion, domesticate the masses, impede the process of popular emergence. From this perspective, it is not surprising that education becomes one of the first targets. Weakening education and filling it with practices driven by hidden or explicit ideological agendas prevents people from developing the capacity to think critically. Otherwise, a genuinely critical education could help people move beyond emotional reactions to artificial problems and challenges those who abuse power. Education should help people analyze their own contexts and act accordingly. This type of education cannot have a top-down character. It cannot be imposed because imposition contradicts the very principles of critical education. Instead, critical education should be grounded in the lived experiences of people who are capable of understanding their own context and developing concepts that respond to the challenges they actually face, rather than merely adopting unfamiliar concepts imported from elsewhere. As Freire puts it, education should emerge from a theory that is analytical contact with existence, enabling one to understand and experience that existence fully and completely. At this point, several questions emerge for us. What does the education system do for us or to us? What kind of world or epoch are we living in? What kinds of educational practices surround us and shape our thinking? Do we have a say in our education? Are we thinking through concepts that emerge from our own experiences and contexts, or through concepts created elsewhere and simply handed to us? Who decides what counts as knowledge and whose knowledge is left out? Are we learning to understand our reality or merely learning how to adapt to it? If we become critically conscious of our reality, what are we prepared to do about it? Can education lead not only to understanding our world, but also to transforming it? Asking these questions of our education systems is crucial because only the critical consciousness we develop can lead to critical action. So, always question your education.